Well, hello, friends. We're going to do the now familiar allowing everyone to roll into the Zoom room. And while we do that, so we'll give it about a minute before we actually start presenting. And while we're waiting, we're going to launch a little poll just to get a sense of who's joining us this evening, especially when it comes to planning for school breaks, especially this whole summer break thing. It definitely, we definitely have folks of a lot of different age groups who are interested. So we'll give it about a minute and then we'll probably only about another 30 seconds. When we get to this point of preparing for a webinar, I always feel like this is a little bit of, needing to bust out the Jeopardy theme or something else along the way. Sort of the sitting in awkward silence while we're on screen and you're watching us.
Everyone's just finishing up dinner or in the middle of it.
Yeah. And chances are good, we probably even have some folks in the car, perhaps on their way to and from dinner, who are just listening on audio as well.
Our California folks are having a coffee and a snack.
Yes. Oh, good point. Good point. Yeah. Well, we'll go ahead and get started because we want to make sure that everyone has a chance to have dinner or coffee and a snack or whatever it is you've got going on this evening. We've got a good combination of folks in here, though, definitely. So, well, welcome again. We're very glad you're here. I'm Meredith Graham. I'm one of the counselors with CollegeWise. I'm going to talk real briefly about CollegeWise before we get into the content of tonight. And then I'll do an introduction for myself and I'll have Summer introduce herself as well. CollegeWise is the nation's largest private college counseling company. We started with one counselor in Irvine, California, who worked out of the back of his car. That's our founder, Kevin McMullen. And now we've served more than 26,000 students across, mostly in the US, but really around the world as well. And our mission is to be a trusted resource for high quality information for all families. And really, that's all about increasing the joy and decreasing the stress of the journey to college. We want students of all backgrounds, if they want to go to college, we want them to know that it is possible for them, and we want to help support them to get there. Whether you're an A student or a C student or everywhere in between, there is a college option that's out there and available for you. And so before we get into the content this evening, we will hit the most frequently asked question. Yes, everyone will receive a copy of the recording for this after the session. You'll probably get it in the next couple of days. Make sure to double check your junk mail because occasionally it lands in the junk mail file afterwards. But you will get a copy of this recording so that you can listen and revisit it should you wish to do so. So a little bit about me and my background. As I said, I'm Meredith. I am one of our counselors here at CollegeWise. I'm currently based in Columbus, Ohio. I work almost entirely online. I do have an occasional student that I meet in person here, not very often anymore with the advent of everyone being on Zoom. We all spend all the time on Zoom. I have been with CollegeWise almost 10 years now. So this summer, July will be my 10th anniversary with CollegeWise. Before that, I spent about 15 years on the college side in a combination of admissions and advising and recruiting. I did my undergraduate at the College of Worcester and my master's degree at Kent State and paid my way through grad school in Kent State in the admissions office as a graduate assistant there. And I spent 5 years at Purdue and 7 years at Cornell as associate director of admissions while I was there. And then I spent a little time at BU in a retention office, which was really a fascinating experience. And then I hopped over and joined CollegeWise, and it's been a really a wonderful ride since then. So, and I'm going to throw it over to Summer and let her introduce herself now and take it away from here.
Good evening or good afternoon to everyone on the call. I really appreciate you joining us. And thank you to Meredith. So my name is Dr. Summer of Morosino, and I have been with CollegeWise for about a year. And I just absolutely love working with CollegeWise and working with the CollegeWise students. I have worked as a higher education professional for about 15 years. And I've run the gamut of everything in admissions. So I did traditional freshman admissions, transfer counselor for many years. I worked as an international counselor and traveled abroad a bit. And then I ran a graduate admission department for about 5 years at the University of Hartford. After finishing my doctoral degree at Northeastern University, I was afforded the opportunity to take a provost position, so overseeing all academic affairs for a small art and design college. And I did that up until June of 2022. We did what was best for the campus, and we moved it to a brand new location, which was unfortunately too far from my home, but it all worked out. I decided to do a career change and work directly with students again, which I desperately missed. So I took a chance with CollegeWise, or rather they took a chance with me, and it's been absolutely wonderful. So thank you so much for joining us on this call. All right, so I want to just breeze through the agenda so you know what our goals are for the evening and what subjects we will be talking about. So the first thing, why are you here? Why this session? So Meredith and I really want to help you strategically plan your summer for your student, and make sure that it's both relaxing and productive. We'll present some food for thought ideas and some out of the box ideas of what students can do. We'll talk about goal setting. This is really important because we want to be realistic about, the student, what's best for the student, where they are in the process, and also what their strengths and weaknesses are, as well as the context of, the current admission environment. So what are the goals within that? And then we'll talk about actually building out the summer plan. I had mentioned that we might have some creative ideas for you other than just an internship or scooping ice cream. Those are both great things, but we can tell you a few other plans that could be of interest. And then, of course, talking about academics, career-related activities that are open to you. And last, but certainly not least, is the ever important question and answer session. We do want to leave a bit of time where we can answer your questions. Did I miss anything, Meredith?
I don't think so. I think the two things we have that I forgot to say as we were starting up, we've got our colleague Caitlin in the chat box and in the Q&A as well. She'll be handling some of the Q&A while we're presenting, and then we will do live Q&A at the end with at least a few of the questions. She'll be watching for some of the real hummers that we should tackle at the end. Just so you know, we may not be able to get to every single question, though. We do have a pretty large group here tonight, so we will tackle as many as we can, but we may not be able to get to all of them. And then to sort of come back to what you were saying, Summer, about sort of why this session and everything, I think a lot of students and families, there's sort of this fear and anxiety around the term "it depends." If you're not already sick of hearing that from admissions folks, you will get sick of that, because I think it's far more nuanced and far more complex than a lot of folks realize from the outside. But that makes it frustrating for families when you hear us as counselors or admissions officers say, when you ask the question, well, should I do this internship or should I do this summer camp? Well, the answer is it depends. No, there's no one uniform answer for that. And so I think one of the important keys in setting up a summer is to manage expectations in a sense. And what I mean by that is, a lot of times families, have this sort of vision of, would love for my student, or the students want this, to have some sort of a really fantastic professional type internship over the summer while you're a high school student. And that's a great idea in concept. But internships for high school students are few and far between, quite honestly. Most students who end up with actual sort of workplace internship kinds of things, like the kinds of things that college students typically do, they usually get them because there's some sort of a family connection with somebody who's willing to host and mentor a high school intern, or it's one where you're paying an organization for the privilege of being an intern, which isn't really what most families have in mind when they think about an internship. They can be great, don't get me wrong, but that's not usually what most families are thinking of when they think about an internship. I did actually have a student this past summer who did get a paid internship with an engineering company. He was very excited about it. He sent more than 100 cold emails on LinkedIn in order to get that internship. Now, for him, it was the exact right choice. He ended up having a fantastic experience. He learned a ton. But for a lot of students and families, they hear that and think, that doesn't sound like how I want to sort of spend the late fall and the early spring trying to get that internship set up. I think also a lot of students and families sort of end up overestimating how much free time you're actually going to have over the summer. At this moment, the summer seems infinite. I always feel like that at this time of year, like, oh, it just seems like it's going to last so long and there'll be so much free time. But students and families a lot of times tend to forget about the time that they're going to spend on things like family vacations or maybe cross-country conditioning workouts or summer class assignments or things like that. And those things are also really important and they also take time. So think about what it is you hope to accomplish over the summer in the time you actually have available. One of my colleagues, Nikayla, talks about setting goals in 3 different categories: personal development, intellectual development, and professional development. And that works for a lot of different pieces in the journey to college. But when you're thinking about summer, it's important to think about focusing on one of those each summer, rather than trying to hit all 3 of those each summer, because a lot of times then you end up trying to do too much with your time. And then make sure that you adapt along the way. Summer, I know you had a really fantastic example of one of your students last year. You want to share that?
I do. So I had this wonderful student. She is a soccer star for all intents and purposes. And she's also really passionate about ending human trafficking. And she actually got a coveted internship with a human trafficking nonprofit, working directly with the director of that nonprofit. A few days before she was slated to start, the director emailed her and said, "I'm so sorry, but I got this amazing opportunity. I'm leaving the nonprofit," and therefore her internship was no more. And she had really banked on this filling the majority of her time during the summer. So she had a moment to think, which was rare for her. She's usually pretty scheduled out and taking rigorous course load. So in this moment, she was talking with friends, and a few of her friends had neurodivergent siblings. And they had shown some real interest in soccer, but they were a bit older and there were no programs for them. So my student actually decided to start her own little soccer clinic or camp, and work in small groups or one-on-one with these students. And it was just absolutely wonderful because it filled her summer, gave her structure. She helped her community. She helped her friends. She had a really unique lived experience, and she made a little money as well. And the parents were incredibly heartwarmed and grateful, and their sons learned some really awesome skill sets that they still call upon today. So with that said, she did end up writing about this in one of her supplemental essays. That was not the point of this. She did not set out to do that, but it was really meaningful for her. And she wrote a really killer essay on this, and got into a select college because of it. Well, as one of the reasons. So yeah, being able to adapt, being able to build some grit in the students and resilience in times that are low stakes. The summer is a perfect time to do that. So, thanks, Meredith.
Yeah, I love that example.
So within that, understanding the times, right? So talk about resilience. Our students have been through a lot the past 2 or 3 years, right? And a lot of uncertainty. So anything that we can lend to give them structure and consistency and help them navigate this changing world of admissions is a good thing. So right now, as always, a certain amount of limbo exists. One of those things is surrounding test optional. And I know a lot of parents have questions about test optional and how much time their child should dedicate during the summer to test prep, so on and so forth. And back to you, Meredith, it depends. So it depends on the child, and it also depends on the college. So the colleges, some of them have really embraced test optional and have definitively stated that this is going to be their policy for the foreseeable future. Whereas others are a little more cautious. They're saying that they will play it by year to year, and they'll let you know how it goes. And then there are the colleges that say, no, we want to see your test scores, and that's just the way it is. So depending on what kind of college your student or child is graduating or gravitating toward, could dictate how much test prep and the types of test prep that they'll need. But the other thing that is kind of up in the air right now is admittance rates, because test optional has inflated the application numbers at some colleges. So colleges 3 years ago that you thought may have been a little easier to get into, or a likely school or target school for your student, that may not be the case. And admission criteria and rates of admittance can change a lot more quickly than they used to. Another thing that I did want to mention for those who are interested in art and design, portfolio requirements have changed a bit. I'm noticing some portfolios are a lot shorter. So instead of 10 to 20 pieces, sometimes I'm seeing 5 to 8 pieces of quality work that are required. But also digital mediums are becoming more and more common in a portfolio. So if your student doesn't have experience designing or creating anything digitally, the summer is a wonderful time for them to do that. I know a lot of camps will actually add on animation and different art courses during the summer. So that's something you can think on. There's also, we keep hearing about this labor shortage, and a lot of the areas of a labor shortage are where high school students traditionally were employed. And colleges really look favorably on paid employment. And it's a great learning experience, interviewing skills to get the job, personal finance skills, and having a little skin in the game when realizing how much college really costs and how important going to college might be for them. Customer service skills, conflict management, all of that will actually help them get a job in college or get an internship in college, and then subsequently help them practice to get a job outside once they graduate college. It also helps them kind of kick the tires on a major they might like. So if they're interested in studying hospitality, maybe they should work in a hotel before they sign up for a 4-year hospitality program at Johnson & Wales. If they're interested in marketing and they're already employed at, say, the local ice cream shop, I really am feeling that ice cream shop tonight. But maybe if they're already employed somewhere, they can ask the local business owner, what's their marketing budget? Can I help you with social media marketing? What's the most impactful marketing campaign that you've done? Is it running ads in the local newspaper, or is it a Facebook raffle or competition? All of those things can really help your student in the long term and be invaluable. There's also a ton of virtual opportunities right now, and that can make it even easier for students to stack things that they normally wouldn't be able to do. So for instance, Columbia offers both a virtual or an in-person pre-college summer program. So your student can do the virtual program and maybe still work at that ice cream shop, and also maybe volunteer at the senior center and have a great summer locally. So that's something that they can do. But again, just make sure that you don't, the student doesn't add on too much. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. And then we're talking a little bit about taking time for yourself. And I'm going to talk about this more later on in the presentation, but it's just really important to allocate the time for rest. And also just time for spontaneity. If students are too scheduled, they may not be able to see a really neat, I don't know, statue on a road trip that their friend invited them to that weekend because they were they just had too much scheduled. So think about that, some rest, recuperation, and scheduling some unscheduled time. Meredith, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think that taking time for yourself, taking some downtime over the summer always feels a little bit scary, I think, for parents in particular. And we're definitely going to talk a little bit about how that fits in as we're coming along. But innovation and creativity as skills, and as sort of experiences, I guess, they both require a certain amount of boredom. So they both require a certain amount of time for you to sort of decompress and not have anything going on so that you can be flexible and try new things and experience new things. There's a post from the CNBC website that was just posted a couple of days ago, and it's currently making the rounds on LinkedIn among my colleagues and friends. And it's from a former VP, former vice president at Google, who talks about the number one skill that they were looking for during the hiring process and how rare it was to see that. And the headline was a little bit clickbaity, yeah, but the article itself I thought was really interesting because the skill they were talking about was self-awareness. And that skill is so, so important, both in hiring, but also in college admissions. And it's something that I've seen over and over with my students. And to some extent, it's anecdata. It's not like I don't have a lot of sort of hard evidence to share with you, but I can tell you that the students of mine who have had greater self-awareness over the last decade, those students have fared better in all dimensions of college admissions. They're happier, they're more comfortable, they find better fit colleges, they just fare better. So having a little bit of downtime to, be creative and innovative and get to know yourself and be a little bit bored actually is a good thing. When it comes to summer activities, admissions readers are really sort of looking to see how you've taken advantage of the opportunities you've had within the context of what is available to you and within the context of what obligations you have. So if you're in a family where you have a younger sibling you care for or elders in the family you help care for, that's just as valid a summer plan as if you had infinite opportunities ahead of you and all the time in the world and no other sort of obligations like a family business or, if you work to help provide for your family. Those are perfectly valid summer plans as well, or elements of a summer plan, I should say. Really, more than what you do, colleges want to understand why you are doing what you're doing. What is it that interests you? How are you choosing to spend the free time that you have? And colleges, particularly colleges that practice holistic admission, they're always looking for students who have evidence and show evidence that they're curious and that they're collaborative and that they're creative and that they're caring. These are things that are constants in college admissions. They are things that colleges are always, always looking for. So how can you, as a student, take advantage of the situation you're in, whatever that situation is, and still keep it balanced? Rest and balance matter. You can still have fun and you can still rest. You're hearing this as a theme, I'm sure.
Yes, thank you, Meredith. So rest is important. Do as the dog, lay on the couch sometimes. How can you build an enjoyable and productive summer if you're just tired and burnt out? It's pretty hard to do. And to Meredith's point about goal setting, it's and big picture this is the long term. This is the 4-year slog until you get into college, and then 4 years after that too. So we want to ensure that students have good habits of rest and recuperation. There was a study done by the Salk Institute for Biological Studies to the University of Washington, and the study was done in 2018, so fairly relevant still. And it basically determined that high school students are happier and they get better grades with the more rest that they have, getting a good night's sleep and just feeling good about life. Because they've slept and done some fun things with their friends, whatever it does to recharge the battery. So having a flexible plan. We've already talked about that a little bit more. Sometimes life doesn't go the way we want it. We all are acutely aware of that right now, and that's okay. So, I have an example for you. So I have a sophomore, and she's really, really passionate about politics in the future. It would make sense for them to do a summer program in Washington, D.C. or job shadow for the local state representative. But after a student does this, they may decide that that's not the right path for them at all. And that may come as a giant disappointment because they have been curtailing everything they do towards that one narrative. And so it's really important for students to tell multiple narratives and be multifaceted. It's good to have some continuity and consistency. You don't want to be all over the place all the time, but it's okay to be a little avant-garde and try new things. That's another theme of tonight, is try new things, do some things out of your comfort zone and out of the ordinary. I took this example very personally. I really wanted to be a lawyer with every fiber of my being. And then I sat through a probate court proceeding and my world shattered. And I said, nope, this is not the path for me. So I was really grateful for that lived experience, because it saved me from going through 4 years of college trying to prep for law school, taking the LSAT, and then going through 3 to 4 years of law school if I was working full-time too, and then deciding, wow, this is terrible. I don't want to do this. So that's an extreme case. You would hope that I'd have a little exposure to it throughout the collegiate process too, right? But it's just an example. If you can learn some things a little earlier on, it just makes it easier to pivot. I also, believe in doing a passion project, doing something kind of strange or different that the student has always wanted to do, but they just didn't have the time to do it, or they might have been graded on it. For instance, they've always wanted to build a birdhouse, but they're not particularly handy, and they're afraid to take shop class because they didn't want to lose a limb and they didn't want to get a C. So building a birdhouse during the summer, great passion project. Another one I wanted to just mention is I have a student. She is a junior at Beverly Hills High School. She actually is from Kuwait. This summer, she's going back home to Kuwait. And she's like, I don't know what to do as a passion project. I have no idea. She's interested in architecture, so she has an architecture internship lined up in Kuwait. And she's going to take a summer course. But she says, I don't have anything interesting going on. Do you have any ideas? And her and I started talking about dessert, of all things. And her favorite dessert is baklava. And we were talking about having that with coffee, because coffee culture is very prevalent in her culture. And then we started talking about her aunt, who makes a wonderful baklava. And I said, why don't you try and get her recipe? And, why don't you make it with her? And she's like, yeah. And then I could write down the recipe in 2 languages and take a photo of it. And I said, great. Why don't you rinse and repeat that with as many family members as you can? And then you can, before you leave Kuwait, you can package it up into a lovely little cookbook, and as a parting gift, give it to your family. And that's just a lovely passion project because it means something to her. It's not just to do it to look good to college. And that's going to be the other theme of this presentation, is do things because you love it and you're passionate about it, or you're just curious about it. You don't have to love everything. But don't do it just because it looks good on a college application. Oftentimes admission officers can see right through that. And if you really enjoy something and you really know something, it's easier to write about it in your essays and get that across in your interviews, so on and so forth. Meredith, do you have anything to add to that?
The other piece for me, you're all getting the sense at this point that we really believe that taking some downtime and some rest over the summer are important. And I promise we're going to get into things to do other than rest here in the next few slides. We're not just going to talk about sleep and relaxing for the rest of the presentation, we promise. But one of the reasons we talk about this so much is that sometimes there's sort of this pressure, whether it's real or it feels real, sort of the sense that you have to, again, maximize every moment of your summer. And sometimes students do that to such an extent that they get completely burned out by the end of the summer. And then they're exhausted and depleted rather than rested and inspired and ready to study. And any student who walks into the next school year exhausted is setting themselves up for potential failure, or really a much harder path than they need to walk. So that's part of why we're really sort of hammering on this idea that rest matters. Because ultimately students will be more successful if they've had some downtime and a chance to relax a little bit. Okay, so now let's talk about what you actually can do over your summers. Hobbies and interests are actually a great starting place for things you can do over the summer. I know Summer was talking, Summer, the presenter, school break. Summer, the presenter, was talking a little bit about, taking some time to dig into things that you haven't really had as much time to do. So the example about the birdhouse that she used, this long extended break between school years is really a great time to dig into things that you just enjoy, but don't have time for the rest of the year, or, something that's a deeper, longer project. So maybe you want to watch every single Wes Anderson film, or maybe you want to challenge your French language skills by reading a book of Baudelaire's poems in the original French. Maybe you want to see if you can cut 2 minutes off of your 5K time, or improve your 3-point shooting percentage. Or maybe you want to read everything you can at your local library so that you can come up with your own design for an e-bike. Are there museums in your town that you want to visit but never have time to visit? Do you want to learn to cook your family's favorite meals, similar to what Summer was saying about the baklava? Do you want to teach yourself to make mods to your favorite video game? Or maybe learn a new coding language just for funsies? Over my 10 years at CollegeWise, I've had students use each of those different examples as a part of their summer experiences. And they're all in college or have graduated from college in some cases. For each of them, that ended up being a really interesting, engaging, internal bucket filling kind of an experience. They did it just because they were interested in those things. A couple of years ago, I actually was working with a set of siblings, and over one of the summers, their family had to clean out their grandmother's home. And they both found inspiration for their curiosity in the task of cleaning out their grandmother's home. The older brother was fascinated by some of the family correspondence he'd found, some of the different letters and signatures on the backs of pictures and things like that. And so he decided to try to teach himself Italian so that he could read and follow his family's correspondence and sort of understand his family's history a little bit better. His younger sister was really into art and had a curiosity around properly storing and archiving old pictures and documents. So she decided to teach herself how to properly archive old documents and photos so that she could help preserve her family's heritage that way. So now both of those students did end up writing about those experiences in their college applications. But again, that wasn't why they did that. They did that because they felt a connection to their family, to their heritage. And it was something that they were inspired to pursue simply because they were curious about it. And it wasn't, it's not any part of any formal program or any formal recognition. They just did it because it was something they were curious about. So they leaned into their own interests in order to, make the most out of their summertime.
All right. So we're going to get a little bit into the academic and career development part of summer planning. So one amenity, because they're free, are MOOCs. So MOOCs are basically online courses that are open to the public. They're generally completely free. And many really amazing universities have these. Yale was one of the first to have these. Their most popular course is on happiness, and they start usually about every 8 weeks. And a student can go ahead and pre-register on Coursera for one of these and take the course. They're great for just enrichment, enlightenment. You can take it with the student if you like and have something to talk about and help marinate over dinner conversation, and just build that family relationship and also that intellectualism at the dinner table. You can also take online courses or on-ground courses. The local community college systems in most states are absolutely fantastic, very affordable, and they offer a plethora of classes during the summer session and oftentimes multiple iterations. So you might be able to take an accelerated course in the month of May and be done with it and have the rest of your summer available to you. And these courses are for credit. So a student could potentially transfer these to wherever their home institution will be, and get some course credit, knock some general education requirements out of the way. Library programming and resources are always fantastic. Many states have opened up virtual resources to everyone that lives in that state, regardless of what town you live in, as long as you have a library card. Job shadowing and informational interviews. This is something that I think is so powerful, and you can actually access as a parent fairly easily through your network. And what I mean by that is many of you work for companies that have kind of bring my child to work day that you could capitalize on. Many of you have coworkers that you're friendly with that wouldn't mind interviewing your child for a faux job, and just helping the student develop their interview skills and kind of getting their elevator pitch down in 30 seconds. Who are you? What do you do? Those are really just important life skills, let alone for college applications. And usually the summertime is a little slower in companies and people are more apt to do this during the summertime. But use your network. I just had a student actually a week ago. He was really interested in politics. A lot of my students are interested in politics, and he really wanted an internship. But as we've said before, these internships are far and few for that high school age demographic. So his parents happened to be going to a fundraiser, and their local state representative was there, and he was running for Congress or wants to run for Congress. So the parents said, you know what, this is an opportunity. Let's just throw our hat in the ring and ask this man if he needs any help. And they asked him, and the rep came right back and said, yes, I need someone to help me with development and fundraising. And so now my student is starting his volunteer work fundraising in about a week or two. He doesn't even have to wait till the summer. And then they've promised him some interesting projects over the summer if all goes well. So that's just an opportunity that the parents happened to be close to and to see and take advantage of. And now the student has an internship. So don't be afraid to use your network. It's totally fine to do it, and help the student build those skill sets in a safe, caring environment. Meredith, do you have anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I want to just make a couple of quick comments about informational interviewing. I have a student who is just waiting to hear back on the rest of his decisions right now, who had some really fantastic luck with informational interviewing this year. It's something that I actually encourage my students to do quite often, for students who are curious about different careers or trying to understand similarities and differences from different areas. And this student was originally thinking he was interested in architecture, but then wasn't sure if he wanted architecture or architectural engineering or maybe civil engineering or construction engineering. And so, we talked about doing some informational interviews. And so his mom happens to work in a position where she is connected with folks who are architects and civil engineers and construction engineers. So she was able to sort of share some names with him, and he did the outreach. His mom didn't do the outreach for him. He did the outreach. He reached out to the different people and said, hey, can I talk to you? And he went and he sat down and did informational interviews. And we actually have a whole little sort of a template. Sounds silly, but we have a template that we can have students use when they go to do informational interviews. It helps them feel comfortable and confident, because it's a little scary to do an informational interview as a high school student, at least for most high school students. But he went and did a series of them. I think he ended up doing 4 different informational interviews. And by the last one, his conversations were so interesting and they were so impressed with him. They invited him to come back and do a job shadow. And then they invited him to actually they created a summer internship for him because he was so engaged and had learned so much through these informational interviews. So that is not always an outcome of informational interviews. Like, you can't walk into an informational interview assuming that it will turn into a job or an internship, but it can happen. So, going in and sort of learning things and being able to sort of, again, get to know yourself better, that self-awareness piece I was talking about before, having a better understanding of your own interests and sense of direction. It all plays out and works really well in the long run. For students, I want to say one other thing here. For students who maybe they're interested in an area that their parents don't work in, or maybe you've already tapped out your parents' network and you're a little bit concerned, you can always ask your teachers as well. Some of your teachers, particularly in areas you're interested in, they might know people that you can connect with. You might even be able to do an informational interview with a teacher if it's somebody who worked in a different field before becoming a teacher. And I also want to give a shout out to librarians. Summer, I know, mentioned library programming and resources. I'm not going to lie, I think public libraries are among the most underrated, underutilized resources. Feel free to talk to your librarians about this. For students, talk to the youth librarian. Sometimes they have really cool, innovative ideas, and they're there, to help you connect with other areas and resources. So there are a lot of different directions you can take all of these things. When it comes to other ways that you can sort of engage with academic and career development, again, we've talked a lot about online programs here, and some students don't mind online. Some students are served quite well by it. There are some students who just, quite frankly, are zoomed out over the last few years. Totally get it. So if an online program doesn't seem like your thing, doing something that's in person really can be beneficial as well. I don't know that there's necessarily a preference among admissions officers between one or the other. You just sort of have to lean into what it is that you think, again, lean into what it is that's best for you. It's another one of those, it depends. Where do you think you're going to get the most out of the experience? For students who are looking at ways to challenge themselves, there are different sorts of competitions that are available in different areas. For some students, they get really lit up and super excited about competitions. So you can look at things like the History Day competition, or look at some of the different science fairs or STEM fairs, robotics. There are different film festivals where, if you're a film person, you can sort of create and develop and enter things into a film festival. There's different writing competitions. I know the last couple of years, the New York Times has even had a writing competition where you can sort of share your college essay if it's on a certain series of topics or some select topics. They invite students to submit them. So if those are the kinds of things that you're interested in, use your favorite search engine and dig in a little bit and see if you can find those. I've got 3 URLs on the website here. These are all different areas that are sort of, I would refer to them as sort of citizen research kinds of opportunities. The history one isn't so much research as it is sort of helping develop better archives, but the science one and the citizen research one, that Zooniverse, those are both places where you can go in and get involved in some sort of a project on some kind of a topic that you're interested in. When I was on Zooniverse earlier today, there were about 100 different current citizen research topics, so citizen science-y kinds of things, including one on language acquisition in infants, which I thought was just really fascinating. But you can take a look at what's in there, and if you think, I'm interested in this, I think I'd like to get involved. Again, it's a great way for you to learn something. It's not graded. It's just you exploring your curiosity. It's a low-risk way to try something that you're curious about. And so you can, dig in and sort of say, hey, I learned something about some figure in history that I'm interested in through this archiving project, or I learned something about language acquisition. I learned something about, birds, whatever it is you're interested in, take a look in there, and you might see something that's either directly related or tangentially related. And again, some of this is just about exploring your curiosity. It doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect fit for you in order for it to be worthwhile. Again, if it's something that you're curious about, it still can be worth your time. And again, if you try it and you hate it, no harm done. I had a student a couple of years ago who thought for sure she wanted to be a doctor. And she spent a lot of time doing sort of hospital volunteering and working on like a certified nurse practitioner or nursing certificate. I forget what the technical name for it was. Forgive me, folks who are in nursing and in medicine, where I've just botched that name. But she was working on some of those different areas and got the certification she needed. So she was going to be able to do like some low-key ride-alongs on an ambulance in her area. And she did the first one and was terrified. And she realized that she didn't want to have somebody's life in her hands. And that for her was sort of her aha moment of like, I'm not interested in being a doctor. And she had invested quite a bit of summertime in these things. And again, these weren't graded. These were just things she was doing because she was sure this was an area she wanted to do. But again, kind of like what Summer was saying earlier, how wonderful that she was able to figure it out sooner rather than later, and not end up, at a college and changing her major down the road or in med school and saying, why am I here? I have no idea why I'm here. And again, I know Summer mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of merit in simply applying for jobs, practicing interview skills, just even interviewing for a job at a summer camp, or you can call your local community center or local town office and see if there are summer jobs available. I know here in Greater Columbus, there are the different communities have different sort of summer camps that they put on for youth every year for littler kids. And every year they're looking for teenagers to apply for jobs to help out with the summer camps. Great experience, or it can be for some students. So again, calling and asking and doing some interviews, that's a great skill along the way. And again, it's sort of a soft way to fail. If you try it and you don't get the job, okay, you still, it's a little bit less stakes or lower stakes than it might be otherwise. And hopefully we've given you some good ideas about other ways and things that you can do to sort of, cultivate your own interests over the summer. So now Summer, the co-presenter, what else did I miss here?
I think you got it all. And then okay. Thank you.
All right.
Great. So let's talk about application planning. This is probably one of the most anxiety provoking pieces for parents and the students is, okay, how do we start dealing with applications to college? So first and foremost is just knowing your stuff, researching and visiting. I cannot stress this enough. And building it organically into things you were already going to do. It doesn't have to be this high pressure blitz of seeing 15 colleges and not remembering which one was which by the end of it. You can do that. That's totally fine. I highly suggest taking notes after each visit. But, if you were going on vacation anyway, maybe build in a few colleges along the way if it's a road trip, or just Googling a college or two in the location that you're flying to, even if it's international. And take a look at the colleges and figure out what you like, but more importantly, what you don't like about the colleges. Go to the college even if you've never heard of it, or you have no desire to go there. I have had some students that had no desire to go to a college and they visited and they went, wow, this is exactly what I wanted. I've never heard of this place before, but I want to go here now. So it can open your horizons a bit. However, it's also just helpful to figure out, do you want a suburban campus? Do you want an urban campus? Do you want a traditional campus that is self-contained? Or do you want a campus that's kind of spread out through a city, or anywhere in between? There's just so many iterations, and the more that you see, the better handle you'll have on it. For our rising seniors, the summer is a wonderful time to get ahead of the game and just take some of that pressure off of yourself. So if you are going into your senior year, you can actually start filling out your Common App right now, just putting your account together. That's all right now. And then your personal statement is actually solidified and released. So you can start to write that in May or June. Some high schools will help you in your English class to write your college essay. And sometimes those are great, and sometimes those are just a great writing exercise and you do something else. But you can actually write your personal statement in June. And then Common App opens up August 1st. So that's a great time to get your supplementals done, fill out your application. And we have many, many students that work with us that are completely applied and done before they even start school. So with enough planning, and they also take time for our favorite, rest and recuperation during the month of July, right? So there's good balance there. The other thing is there are lots of free resources out there. Khan Academy is wonderful. If a student is struggling with a subject matter, Khan Academy has great tutoring options, test prep, the ACT Academy. CollegeWise, of course, has lots of free amenities and resources for students, even if you haven't signed up with us. There's a lot out there for you, and the summer is a wonderful time to kind of mine that and read it at your leisure. Meredith, do you have anything else that I missed?
I think that's just about it. We're gonna head into just a couple of quick things before we do our live Q&A. I know that there are a few questions that are already hanging out in the Q&A that we'll be answering. I know Caitlin's been taking care of this as well. What you see on the screen right now is a QR code. If you are watching this on recording, or if you're watching it live, if you're interested in learning more about possibly working with us, you can scan the QR code and get connected directly with calendars and sign right up and get help. If you are curious about working with us, hopefully Summer and I have given you a little bit of a sense of what kind of things a CollegeWise counselor can help a family with. You can go ahead and also click on the poll on the screen as well. You've got the three options: the yes, please, the I'd like more information first, or the no, thank you, not at this time. That's totally fine. If you click yes, or I'd like more information first, somebody from CollegeWise will be in touch with you to either give you the information you need or to connect you with getting to work with Summer or myself or Caitlin or one of our other fantastic colleagues. And for the folks who are saying thanks, not at this time, you'll have an email from us in your inbox. And if you ever change your mind, you know where to find us and you'll be able to come back and join us then. So I'm going to leave the QR code up for just a second and the poll up for just a second as well. I know that there were a few questions here. Summer, do you want to talk about what's the best place to talk about your summer activities in your application?
Sure. So that's a wonderful question. And so if you are applying through the Common Application, which I would say at this point, about 90% of schools use the Common App application. There is a dedicated section for activities, not specifically summer activities, but activities. So that would be something that the student did throughout the year or just during the summer or anywhere in between. There are a limited number. So we talk to a number of spaces, excuse me. So we talk to students about what activities to include, what are the most important to them. There's actually a system of ranking them in importance. So there's a bit of nuance when placing them into the application, but there is a dedicated spot. I would also say secondary to that is, of course, I sound like a broken record, but those essays, those supplemental essays, or even the personal essay can be a great place to talk about an experience or activity that the student did over the summer.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm going to ask Caitlin if she has a moment. If you can throw the link for the Common App guide into the chat, that might be really helpful at this point. CollegeWise every year produces a guide to creating a Common App, great Common App, not just a Common App, but a great Common App. And it sort of walks you through all the different steps for how to put the application together. And so sort of addresses some of what Summer was just talking about in terms of the activities section and how to think about how to put the information in there. Full disclosure, I'm something of a Common App super fan. So I'm currently the editor-in-chief of our Common App guide. So I am a huge fan of it. But it's available right now. It's free. It's something you can download and use it to start working on it now. As Summer was saying, seniors, you can, and actually younger students can as well. You can roll it over from year to year. It's kind of a cool feature that they offer. Again, like I said, I'm a bit of a super fan. I will try really hard not to just nerd out about the Common App right now though. One of the other questions that came up was around how colleges feel about expensive pay-to-play programs. Do they help, or are they just a waste of time? I'm going to start with that and then I'll pass it over to Summer. Do they help, or are they a waste of time? Yes. It depends. Again, this is, that's not a yes or no question. It depends really is the answer. And I'm not trying to make light of this question. We get this question a lot from families. Is it helpful? I think it's not always helpful in the way that families think it's going to be helpful. I think sometimes students and families say, oh, Brown is offering this fantastic summer program. That's going to help me get into Brown. And no, it actually won't help you get into Brown. If the content of the summer program is a good fit for what you're interested in, if the context sounds like it's interesting, and if it sounds like, a way the student would want to be like living on a college campus and getting experience with being on a college campus and having a little bit of that taste of that independence, then yeah, they can be fantastic. But as you pointed out, they're expensive. So, not every family has the money for that or wants to spend their money on that. So if you're thinking like, does this give my students a leg up for admission at that particular college? No, it doesn't. If you're thinking about, is this a cool experience that my student really would like to engage in and they'd be living on the campus and they really are excited about the topic, then they can be interesting. But is it an absolute necessity? No. Hopefully we've given you a lot of other possible ideas for ways that are low cost or even no cost to pursue that can still be really valuable. Summer, anything else you want to add there?
No, I think that about sums it up. Thanks, Meredith.
All right. All right. Oh, we got a couple of really good ones. Someone is saying they've got a student who is very stressed about the summer and isn't wanting to make choices or do research and is struggling to sort of get out of their comfort zone and maybe sort of move away from their current friends. I hope I'm interpreting that question correctly. Trying to think and talk and read at the same time doesn't always work well. Summer, what's your take on that one?
That is a tricky question because here we go again. It depends. It depends on the student. If they're an introvert, kind of forcing them out of their comfort zone can be very, very difficult, especially if they don't feel like they've been heard when it comes to things they want to do. So what do I mean by that? I think sometimes, and this is not a plug for CollegeWise necessarily, but we oftentimes are hired because the parents don't want to be in that nagging role. And the child sometimes turns off their parents and doesn't believe what their parent is saying because their parent is on them about things that are important to them and potentially life-changing in their future. So what I found is it's successful when we talk with students because it's a different perspective and we are subject matter experts in the area. So I totally understand if you would maybe take the student to a college and have them go for a visit and maybe see if the college will do informational interviews with an admission counselor and maybe hearing it from a different perspective from someone that's not their high school counselor, not their parent, someone that has no vested interest in their future, technically, just giving them impartial information, that can be wildly powerful. So maybe just changing the framework of where the information is coming from. That would be my first piece of advice. Meredith, what are you thinking?
And I think that really sums up, that's a tricky one. Getting students to sort of challenge themselves and move outside their comfort zone can be hard. And sometimes, there are some students who maybe just aren't sort of ready for some of this. We were talking about this a lot with one of our project teams just the other day, talking about like, how do you help and support a student who may not actually be ready for college? And by ready, I mean emotionally ready to go away to college. Maybe this is a student who should think about a gap year later on. Nothing wrong with a gap year. Like it actually can be really valuable. And if this is a student who's feeling, maybe too timid to go too far, that might be something that's valuable. So I think it's worth sort of having some of those conversations and figuring that out. We've got time for one more quick question. I'm going to answer this and then we'll have to pull the plug on the webinar. We want to let everybody go on time. For computer science majors, an internship with a company or research in a college lab with a PhD, which should you choose, pros and cons? oh, hey, guess what? It depends. I told you were going to be sick of that phrase if you're not already. And here's what I would say for this student. If this were my student, I would say, instead of asking which one is going to look better or which one would be preferred by colleges, flip it around. Which one are you more interested in? Is it the topic? Is it the context? Which one sounds more appealing to you as a student? Because that's where you're going to get greater benefit and greater value out of it, is the one you're more excited about, because you will be more deeply involved in it. You will be more engaged in it. And that is ultimately way more interesting than whether or not, which one might you think is going to look better to an admissions officer. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us this evening. I really appreciate it. Thanks to Summer for being a fantastic co-presenter. Thanks, Caitlin, for tackling questions in the Q&A and for pushing out resources in the chat as well. As we said earlier, you will get a copy of this recording in your email in the next couple of days. So feel free to rewatch, re-listen at your leisure. And we really very much appreciate you being here. Thanks, and have a fantastic evening.
Take care.